we'll be looking at a new development, the demand for indemnity by customers as directed by the CBN to all commercial banks and payment service banks. So what does that mean when indemnity will be asked to be provided by the customers for online transfers of above 1 million naira? Now, this will be a stay tuned. Talking business to discuss the first topic today, which is the demand for indemnity for online transfers for above 1 million naira for individual and 10 million naira for corporate. Now, I have with me an economist, Desi Owubu. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
It's always a pleasure to have you on Talking Business because we know there's going to be a very incisive discussion. All right, now, the directive by the CBN to commercial banks and even payments service banks to demand indemnity for customers who want to make online transfers of 1 million naira and above for individual, and then 10 million naira for corporates. How does that appeal to you? Does it appeal to you as a very good development, or you just see it as one way again for financial institutions to avoid being liable for anything?
The fact that it's coming from the CBN. The CBN is not there to defend financial institutions, but to defend mostly the depositors and people who want to use the system. We must also consider the fact that the rate of online transactions have increased in the last 3 years. Just this year alone, it increased almost 50–60% compared to last year. And that means that when the system is becoming more robust, there need to be rules to regulate the flow of funds. A lot of Nigerians are not comfortable using the online payment system. But there are also some complaints. Interbank exchanges, sometimes you make a transfer, it is missing somewhere. And sometimes when you are doing third-party related activities, I make a transfer to you from my bank to your bank, and then your bank doesn't get it. And then you are hanging somewhere. It takes normally between an average of 20 to 30 days for a bank to document the error, and sometimes in the end they don't resolve it, and then who is liable? Do you blame the depositor? Do you blame the bank? Do you blame the processor, the organization that processed the transaction? So because of that, most people are scared of making huge transfers online because of this liability, this risk that we may not be able to, you don't know who to hold liable when there's a problem. So what the CBN is simply doing is to make some guarantees, some kind of insurance that Nigerians who want to make transfers of amounts of 1 million and above can have a basic insurance, which is covered by a player in the system, and such that if something goes wrong, you are guaranteed, the banks are not liable, and then you are guaranteed a certain sum if something goes wrong with your transaction. That's what it basically is. It's an insurance system. So to encourage people to make more online transactions, because they know that there's an insurance covering any payment that they make, kind of. Of course, you know that when there's insurance cover on anything, there must be some cost attached to it. So the news did not cover that part. So at
the end of the day, it makes cost of transaction more.
Yeah, it reduces the risk of transaction, but it will add a little to the cost of transaction in form of insurance. Yes.
Now, talking about insurance, before now, we used to understand that the place of the NDIC is to provide insurance for every deposit of consumers, or customers rather, in the banks. Now, what is different from having the NDIC cover your deposits and you having your transactions indemnified? What's the difference?
The difference is that in the nature of online transactions, is different from traditional banking. In traditional banking, when I make a transfer to you, there's usually a settlement system that ensures that transactions are corrected. But in the online system, there are other players. For instance, you are using a network system like MTN or something, and then you want to make a transfer, and then there's a processor Paystack, for instance, who wants to make the transfer from your bank to the other bank. So there's a lot of players now, which we are not anticipated by the NDIC.
Okay.
The NDIC was created to indemnify against bank runs.
Okay.
When a bank fails, then the depositors tend to lose money. So the NDIC came as a mediator, a kind of, so that you don't just lose all your money.
Okay.
But the nature of online transactions is different. They have a lot of players, and we don't know exactly at what point do you hold somebody liable.
Okay.
It could happen because of what they call network failure.
Okay.
It could happen somebody was able to get my payment details,
Okay.
Identity theft,
Okay.
copy my details, clone my ATM card, and transferred money from my account. Now, if I get a debit alert from a bank that they removed 2 million from my account, the first natural response is to say the bank did something.
Okay.
What if the bank was not aware? What if it was somebody who was somewhere in Lagos, just took my details, played it on the computer, wired the money from my account? Who becomes liable?
Okay.
No, so there's a third party there. So you see there's a criminal somewhere using my details. There's a bank. Naturally, they should have firewall.
Okay.
But then, how do you hold them responsible for a transaction that did not originate from them?
Okay.
And the transaction was done with your own personal details,
Yes.
which only you could possibly supply to somebody.
Yes.
So these are the kind of differences that are peculiar to online transactions. So it requires a new model to operate.
Okay, taking it from the aspect of cybercrime, we
Yes.
do know that financial institutions are even still battling with that. You talk about providing firewalls to make sure that it's very difficult for cyber criminals to access data from financial institutions. But we
Yes.
still see them do that.
Yeah, of course.
Now, even with this now expanding or increasing the amount we can transfer online,
Yes.
from some banks even have it as low as 200,000 naira daily.
Yes.
That's the limit you can transfer
Yeah.
a day. Some have it as 1 million naira. But extending it now, even some banks have already begun to send send messages to customers that, oh, you can now increase your limit to as high as 5 million naira.
Yes.
If you want it increased to 10 million naira, then you can also do that.
Yes.
Do you think it even exposes the customers to more risk and makes it even easier
Yes.
for those who do cybercrime,
Yes.
those who access the accounts and transfer money to do more? Because some persons will say, oh, if, for instance, you misplace your ATM card
Yes.
and then someone has access to it, you just have the mind that, oh, even if it's not on a working day where you can go to the bank
Yeah.
and have that account blocked or anything, they cannot do a kind of huge transaction on your account because of the limit. But with it now extended to as 5 million naira, 10 million. So in one transaction, a huge sum of money can leave your account.
You're right. You're right. That's why there's something we call two-factor authentication on your phone. The basic security architecture most people use is just one factor. You just your password
PIN.
and your PIN.
Yes.
Okay, but the CBN, part of the circular, said that all banks are mandated to create multi-factor level authentication. It therefore means that you can secure your account on several layers at the same time, all unconnected, so that a hacker or somebody, a fisher, will not be able to get all your details at once simultaneously. The chances of hitting a full system of networks is very hard compared to when you just have only 2 levels. You use your ATM or use your password and things like that. So there's a security part of it that backs that part up. We must also consider the fact that the CBN was not targeting all Nigerians. First of all, you'd have asked how many Nigerians transfer 10, 15 million from their ATMs.
At once.
So they were targeting the 5% of Nigerians, the big merchants who want to do big business. So eventually it may not be a policy that affects everybody, because how many Nigerians actually get that amount to transfer?
Yes.
But they were targeting corporate entities who want to make transactions for 2 billion. You want to wire it straight. So instead of going to the bank. So it's just 5% of Nigerians that will be affected by the policy generally. But with the multi-factor level authentication, it makes it more secure. Yeah.
So it's not as easy as when you transfer 5,000 naira.
Yeah, it's not.
As you would just transfer 5 million naira.
Yes, it's not.
Because
It's not.
of security. All right, now you talked about the target audience at this particular time for this policy being some percentage of Nigerians who would make huge transactions.
Yes.
But in all, how do you see it playing out for business in terms of time management and ease of doing business?
Yes, it does a lot because apart from just the policy of these online transactions, the central bank is also encouraging banks. They are setting up a new policy to set up cash centers. Cash centers are for large transactions. So we are going to have hybrid banks, so to speak, where we have a high volume business area where they just have an agency set up by a bank or any institution. Their job is just to accept deposits and make cash transactions on behalf of the bank. So they will just network with the bank. This will encourage security to go around that area. For instance, if you know that we have such high volume transaction centers in this area, then a police station can be set nearby, and then we can increase the security in this area, because we know that anything that happens there is big, high volume. Instead of allowing the system to dissipate itself around everybody, we cannot guarantee all the banks in this country, but we can guarantee high volume areas. That's number one plus. Secondly, like I said, the trend in the last 4 years shows that Nigerians are now more comfortable with online transactions. And there's reason to believe that this comfort will lead to more transactions in the future. Now, if it's going to lead to more transactions in the future, we need to anticipate it and then give laws to ensure that, regulate to ensure that we're able to capture that group. The bottom line is to create what we call financial deepening, so that people have access to transactions, make it seamless. The more you make a transaction process seamless, the more it's easy for people to trust it. Now, if government is saying we should indemnify accounts like that, what we are trying to say is that, don't worry, you'll be assured you are safe to make such transactions. Somebody has to be liable. The government is willing to take most of the liability, so that banking system can work very well, instead of people suing the banks and giving banks problems. If banks feel threatened that these transactions are no longer safe because of network issues, it therefore means that banks will not raise the amounts by themselves. They have no interest to raise it, because they fear that it makes more trouble for them. I mean, that's the job of bank, is not to be doing insurance at the same time with banking. So now that government has said that, let's make it institutional, let's make it normal that anybody who wants to make such a transfer is indemnified. It's under an insurance agreement, a contract, so to speak, and then we spread the cost of running that insurance among everybody. So if I pay 10 naira per transaction, you pay 10 naira per transaction, it doesn't mean anything to you, but the system itself allows people to be protected. So that is going to create what we call financial inclusiveness, allowing more people to trust banking system. That's the essence of banking, to trust the system so that government can operate through the banking system. So that's the bottom line.
Being an insurance scheme, sort of one problem that some Nigerians have had with insurance is the part of claims.
Yes.
At the point where you need to set up or be a part of the insurance scheme, it seems very easy.
Yes.
But when it comes to claims, it seems like it becomes a rigorous process.
Yeah.
You're having to provide certain documents, you're having to prove certain things, and then it's like only when that the institution is unable to say, oh, this was not your doing, or you had no complicity in this, that you can make claims. Do you see that happening here?
No, it's
especially
not
when there's online theft.
Yes.
You know, your money leaves your account, and then the bank says, oh, we don't know how this happened.
Yes.
We can't trace it. Do you see it being really possible for customers to have claims?
Yes, one of the problems the insurance industry faces with regular business is Nigerians have not yet developed a proper identification system. But with the banking system, banking works with data. So we have our BVN, we have our NIN, we have, so there's a know your customer paradigm, which all banks keep in record. So the nature of everybody that works in the banking system, if you have an account, your details are kept on several levels in the banking system. Unlike insurance deals with everyday people. Certain people do not have regular access to data, things like that. So insurance has to do a lot of work to prove your identity, prove your claim, prove the fact that that event happened. But if your money disappears from your account, it goes somewhere. It's easy to trace it within the system if somebody's interested, just by simply clicking some buttons. So the online transaction, like I said,
let's look at that part. If it's easy to trace when your money leaves your account, it goes somewhere.
Yes.
So why is it not always easy to trace when a customer says, oh, I got series of debit alerts and I didn't make this transaction? The bank says, oh, well, they presented your identification and every other thing, so you must have compromised your identity and all of that.
Yes.
So why has it not been the case? What is making this particular one different? There are certain things that were hitherto difficult to do in order to secure people's money are not easy to handle.
The difference, I think, banking is a network of contracts between people. You don't just do things. For example, if I make a transfer to you, the banks know that I made the transfer to you, but there's no law that backs a bank to return the transaction to me. It takes process. If I send money to you by mistake, even if I sent it myself and I sent it to you by mistake, once the money gets to your account, my bank does not have the right to instruct your bank to transfer that money. It takes a lot of time, it takes processes, because somebody can be sued for that. A bank cannot even go to my account and take money from my account without my express permission. So when you are dealing with multi-level organizations, these issues come up. It's not as if they don't know where the money went. It's impossible for money to leave a bank without knowing where it went.
Okay.
It's impossible. It has to be wired either abroad or locally.
Okay.
The problem is the legal issues.
Okay.
How do you are working with several banks. That's why we have the NIBBS, the Interbank Settlement System. The idea is that there's a body that knows where all the transactions go.
Okay.
But there are legal issues. So if you have a problem with your bank, that's why they tell you give us 22 to 30 days to resolve it. This is what they're actually doing. They write to the bank, they send a mail to that bank, the bank returns back, they begin to work together. It takes time to clear these issues. Okay. And but most people are not patient, so they say, my mom, the thing, I got the debit alert. They are supposed to return it. If they understand the way banking works, they know that it's actually, you can't just return money like that. It's not, you are dealing with organizations.
It's more than just a moral issue.
Yes, it's more than a moral issue. There are systemic issues. For a system to work, it has to operate according to rational principles. This banking system was set up according to these principles. And we can't just use emotions to say, okay, I sent the money by mistake, send it back to me. It doesn't work like that. You are going to have permissions at different levels.
Okay, now before we wrap up this discussion, let's look at the issue of cost. Now, cost of financial transaction of recent has become like a burden. Yeah. Now, if you look at the POS that was set up, if you can't get into a banking hall, you just look for one POS operator close by so that you could get your money. But then the cost of transaction, and then when the bank says, oh, you can indemnify your account so that you can increase the online amount of online transfer you can do, but you mentioned cost, which was not really captured. So how do you see that playing out at the end of the day?
Yes, any service, any improvement on the service has some cost. You can't eliminate the cost. What it simply do is to shift the cost from one part to the other. Okay. For example, let's use the POS, for example. When there were no POSs, if you wanted to go to a bank to do a transaction, you need to enter a bus, right? Yes. So you take a bus, you pay transport, you get to the place, and spend some time. So those are costs too. What they simply did was to save that cost, relocate it to the...
The only difference is that you're paying by cash.
You're paying
it doesn't leave your account.
It doesn't leave your account. So, but the POS saves you that distance problem, the transport problem. So you are relocating the cost. Okay. Now the idea is this: to develop a system that is totally efficient without cost is very hard. What we can do is to minimize the overall cost in the system. Okay. Individually, it will not appear to be reducing cost, but overall, it reduces cost. Now imagine all the transport fares we pay to go and do bank transactions. Imagine all the times in this country we had to wait in the banks to do a simple transaction. Okay. Now if you're able to value it in Naira, it will run into trillions of Naira. Now with the POS system, it becomes reduced for everybody, not for individuals from your perspective. But if you look at the macro cost, it is reduced. The same thing with this. This system is going to add a little to the cost of transactions, individually speaking, but on the macro level, it saves the entire banking system and everybody some cost.
Okay, yes. We'll leave it there and just wait to see how it begins to work out. By the time a lot of persons are able to have their account indemnified and begin to do online transactions, that maybe you could just do 1 million Naira as maximum for one transaction. Now you have to do as high as, or you can do as high as 5 million, 10 million as an individual, and as a corporate organization you can do as high as 25 million or even over. Let's see how it plays out at the end of the day. And the ease also of having your account indemnified. We're going to quick break. When we return, we will be looking at the rise of Telco payment service banks. Ahead of that, before you will find some new information on the show. Stay tuned. Thank you for staying tuned to Talking Business on ITV. I still have Destiny Obo in the studio, an economist, and today we're strictly looking at the financial sector. Thank you for being with us. Now, having talked about online transfers, let's also look at the rise of telcos payment service banks. Now, we had 2 before, but recently they just increased to 4, provided by some major telecommunication providers in Nigeria. Now, what's your thoughts on even telcos providing payment service?
Yeah, it's, more is better. Competition, disruption, technologies, innovative disruption. I mean, when you see, like I said, technology disrupts the entire system. Okay. So the banks didn't see this coming. Yes. Those days we thought about a bank as a block of flats. Okay. A world place where you go and keep money and things like that. But with the rise of technology, and especially network technology, telecom technology, it is very easy for people to have banks now without this kind of walls. Okay. And so the telecom sector is now veering into the banking industry.
Yes.
While the banking industry too is veering into telecom too.
Okay.
You know, it's like if I run a business with you, after doing some business with you for some time, I may study your business model.
I was coming to that because it seemed like a collaboration before with interbank transactions where the telecom companies were facilitating these interbank transfers, and they just studied the whole thing and said we could do this on our own.
We can do this. You know, we have the same customer base. Telecom companies work with mass people. MTN alone has over 80 million subscribers. Banks too have 16 to 20 million customers. So they really think about it. We actually have more data of people than banks. The MTN alone, Glo and others, they have more data combined, more than what all the banks in Nigeria are combined. Yes. You get that now. So it's like, we call it a form of integration. So this is more of a sideways integration. When you grow into your competitor's business model or an associated business. So that's what is happening here. For the average customer of the bank, they now have more options. Okay, let's put it this way. You need a physical bank space to do a thorough banking business. But with your cell phone, you can do such banking business with MTN, for instance. You know, so what's happening is these network companies are coming to bring their own expertise in coding and software engineering to buy some customers from the banking system. The banking system will still operate the way it is, but they must evolve if they want to survive in the next 10 years. You know why? Because if these telco companies begin to people are already comfortable using their cell phones and things like that. So if people get comfortable using the telco system, then traditional banks will suffer. It will affect their bottom line. So what people are saying is this: it is going to disrupt the industry. It's going to increase more competition. But the fact that the competition started from collaboration shows that collaboration is the better model to operate than competition. Because if they do competition, the telco industry is more capitalized than the banking industry. As I speak to you now, MTN is bigger than all the banks in Nigeria put together. So if they want to go all out in direct competition, I assure you they will kill almost all the banks. It's simple business. Because their kind of business model is more capital intensive, they have more resources to deploy. On financial level, no bank can match a telco company. But it is not in the best interest of a telco company to compete with all the banks in the country. Because if you try to compete with all of them, the cost of competition is very high. So what the best thing to do is to collaborate with them. So this is what will happen. They will have to form what we call hybridization of the system, telco and banking. So I will borrow some of the things you have. You borrow some of the things we have. We find a way to find a middle ground where we can still make money off people. So collusion is better in that business model than competition. So while it will start first of all with competition, it will evolve later to become collusion, because the banks themselves will have to find a way to enter the business the way the telecom people are going into it too and compete too. For example, you may also see cases where banks are now investing in telcos. So they can also provide that service for themselves. Yes, buying the shares of telcos so that they can influence the policies of the telco companies. And banks have the resources to do that. A bank can invest billions of dollars into a telco company and then from there network the telco company into their banking system to ensure that they don't compete. Like I told you, collaboration. So it's a good thing for everybody. Now,
I want us to talk about the importance of this new trend to financial inclusion. But before that, you mentioned that there's need for the banks to collaborate with the telcos. Now, do you see some kind of sabotage playing out from any side to avoid this collaboration? Now, the telcos majorly provide or facilitate connectivity for the banks. But you've noticed that sometimes when you want to make transactions, whether it's online or you're in the banking system, sometimes you're told server is down. But with some of these new telco payment service banks, you hardly find that happening. Now, when the banks begin to own their own telco operation, do you ever see a true collaboration happening in Nigeria?
Yes, it's a matter of negotiation and interest. It depends on the bargaining power of both industries. Like I said, they've been working together before, and it's easy for them to meet and discuss business. One thing we must understand, the purpose, fighting an industry is different from fighting a firm. So the telcos have no interest disturbing the entire industry. because they depend on the industry.
Okay.
Are you getting the point? There should be some symbiotic relationship between the telcos and the bankers, because we're talking about a full system. On age, the banking system is over 200 years old, so they understand finances very strong. You cannot, no matter how disruptive you are, you cannot take financial discipline and maintenance away from those people. But when it comes to the coding system, the computer system just evolved in the last 50 years. So when it comes to telecommunications and others, they have 50 years experience. When it comes to banking experience, most banks have over 100 years experience. So to me, one cannot take one for a ride, because these people know their onions, they know their business. It is best, it's always best for there to be some inclusion where they can meet. And it is not going to be easy. And like I told you, there will be some competition at first without knowing where to, because the industry is still fluid. We don't yet know, are they not telecom companies or are they telco bank companies? So
even the customers don't even understand the difference sometimes. You just feel like, oh, this is one bank running this. But you don't actually understand which industry is powering the service provided to you.
There's a lot of companies in between the system. Like I told you, we have the interbank settlement system. We have the ATM system. The ATM system is powered by different companies. So when you see those ATMs in your banks, they are not powered by the banks. They are powered by InterSwitch. InterSwitch is a telecom, is a payment system. And InterSwitch is not core banking. So if you in that industry, we have a value chain of different experts. Like I told you, they've been working together since. It's just that these people at the end here and these people at the end here are now looking at each other loggerheads.
But they
spend each other's business. So I do not think the objective, the industry will be destroyed. It will, what Schumpeter in economics called creative destruction. The industry is going to destroy the way things are done and evolve a new system that involves both players working intelligently. They are not threats to the big picture to each other.
All right, now let's look at financial inclusion. Since the traditional banking system have been unable to fully include all Nigerians in the financial sector, now with the coming of the payment service, telco payment service banks, what's your thoughts on financial inclusion?
And more, like I said, the telco companies are already, 3 of the biggest network providers, they have over 200 million subscribers. While the total banking population in this country is just 35%. So it pays the bank to work with the telcos to bring everybody in the network system together. So for financial inclusion, like I said, for every one of us, it's a big win. Because by the time we take the telco people and the banking people, and it will become, the space will be wider. So for overall financial deepening, it will be very good. But for competition, and cost and things like that, we are going to see how it plays out in the future.
Now, the benefits for Nigerians having 2 industry compete for the same customers and almost the same service. What's going to be the benefits?
It's always, anytime companies compete and innovate and technologies are upgraded, the customer benefits. More is even coming. The social network companies are trying to do the same thing too. So in the future, you may be able to make a transaction using your Facebook account. And so when that happens, you see, even the telecom companies, we have to, because those people too are the richest in the value chain. If Facebook only, for instance, begins to enter the payment business, so what do you now say about these other ones too? These ones are small compared to those ones. So you see, like I told you, it's an organic system. We are still finding that. But one thing is certain. The value for the average customer will increase maximally since they can now network through the systems of these companies at minimum cost.
I was coming to that, cost.
At minimum cost to each person. If you can wire through the system, if I can make a transaction through my Facebook account, make a transaction through my MTN line, make a transaction through my banking
So you have multiple options.
I have multiple options. When you have multiple options, the benefits are always very great for you. And because cost of technology, bandwidth technology and others is dropping over time, the average cost for the future banker, a future bank customer, be very low, while the benefits will be very great. That's the benefit of technology.
Now, when you have multiple options, multiple financial transaction options, does it not also open you to multiple risk?
That's why security is coming up.
Particularly with Facebook, you mentioned that social media platforms are looking at this particular service.
Yeah, most people are looking at it, yes.
But social media is quite easy to steal the identity of someone.
And that's why government is there to regulate it, to ensure that the data they have access to and they can share is very limited. You see, there was a scandal with Facebook in the US about identities and using customers' details. The reason they did not give them license to operate a bank is because they've not been able to resolve that issue. These conversations are going on. It will not destroy the system. It simply make it more effective. What that means is that the government does not yet trust social network operators with people's financial data because they can't even trust them with ordinary people's data, let alone financial data.
Someone can hack into your account. Someone can
but
use your account.
These conversations are still going on. These people are developing more firewalls, finding a way to separate customer identity with customer what they post on Facebook. Currently, you cannot separate those two things. So maybe in the future, there will be houses of data separate from social media companies. That's the solution. A data house. So what that data house simply does, they handle data only. And then they will network this data with these social media companies so that they will go focus more on their social media business instead of using all data of customers. If we're able to warehouse this data around, separate where you have access to, in the future, we can allow them to play because we now know that we can trust them with the data we give to them. So when that happens, it will be better for everybody, but it will be highly regulated, looking at it from the government's perspective to ensure that nobody is... of course, there will always be abuse of the system, but the purpose of government is to ensure that these abuses are reduced over time. I remember the first time ATM came to, people thought it would not work. People thought it would not work, and people were skeptical. You just put a machine, but what if somebody else goes and does that?
Even till now, some persons
the first time I used
an ATM card.
Yeah, even up to now. But if you have used the ATM system, those fears are really not as magnified as they were, as we thought it was. It's actually a safe system. Yeah, there are problems here and there, but generally for the larger population, it is safe.
Okay, now the telecommunication industry and the banking industry are like the two most solid industries in Nigeria right now because you could practically say come rain, come shine. They still stand. They stood during COVID-19. They stood post-COVID-19. And if you go to the stock market, they're always declaring profits. Now, with this new business that they both got into, having subsidiaries going into the financial sector, you have banking institutions going to telecom, and you have telecom, of course, going into the financial sector. What's the prospect for these two industries?
More money, of course.
More money?
More money, bottom line.
Okay.
More money. It means not. In fact, in the history of time, bankers always ran away with people's money. You know, so it's more money. This because all of us use the system. And then if you spread the revenue per human being that uses the banking system, even if you just contribute 1 naira to the banking system, the system becomes richer. Okay, so with this financial deepening and things like this, more people will enter the system with more money for them to make. So they will get richer and richer. But what we want to know is this: will the people get poorer and poorer? Because it's like relocating funds from many people to a few people. And that's why government must ensure that they are not oligopolies. They are more, they are competitive too. Because when they are competitive, they are able to spread the cost around. And then if they are competitive, therefore means that instead of you looking at the bank from the customer angle, yourself, you can go and invest in the bank too. So that what you lose here, you get this way too in the profits. So
looking at investment, sorry to cut in. Looking at investment, the stock market. These two industries are the major players, and they practically control the direction of the stock market. But what's your take on that as it affects other industries?
It's not their fault. They are very effective. That's why they control it. They didn't stop. Their laws, they didn't stop anybody from entering the stock market. Okay. The law even forced them to enter the stock market, for instance. You can't operate a bank in this country without being a public company. So
to spread wealth.
To spread wealth. But for the other companies, there are also stringent rules to ensure that they are listed. As I speak to you, over 90% of Nigerian companies are not listed on the stock exchange. Why? You don't blame the government for that. You blame the companies who have not yet organized themselves enough to function like corporations so that they can be listed there. But when these things are happening, it means that you are not talking about the stock market now. In the next 20, 30, 40 years, most Nigerians should be more aware about the stock market. And then I can set up a small company and try to follow the rules and then list my company in the stock market. With time, the stock market becomes very enlarged. And when it becomes enlarged, then the average person can put his money there. as it is now, most Nigerians still function around little businesses. We don't like doing investment type of businesses.
Okay.
So that's not, you can't blame the banking sector. The banking sector are just only forward in that area because their businesses are more formally organized.
Okay.
It doesn't mean they are the only ones that make money.
Okay.
There are millions of businesses in this country that make millions of naira, but they are not formally organized. So that is a matter of formalization.
Okay.
I think we'll get over that in a couple of
Now,
years.
allowing more players come into the sector, we just had two players, two telco players come in now into the payment service.
Yes.
Now, do you see more coming in?
Wow, more will come in. They always move like that. More will come in because the ones that are there are already making money.
Okay.
And so they will watch the first 4 years to see whether their profits increase.
Okay.
Okay, when they see that they are making more profits from that decision, expect another 25 in the next 10 years because it's easy to enter that industry now because it's technology related. So you don't need to build big structures to enter the business.
Okay.
Just get a license from the CBN. Then you write some code and you enter the business. So it's easier to enter the industry. There is no barrier stopping a person from entering the industry. Unlike traditional banking where you have to have a huge capital base before you enter that business. With fintech companies, it's very easy to enter the industry just by operating on basic set of rules.
Are you worried about proliferation? When you make it like an all-commerce affair or provided you are a telco provider, then of course you can get into payment service.
Yes, proliferation is good for the customer, but it's also easily susceptible to abuse.
Okay.
Like I said, regulation will solve that problem. Yes, if proliferation becomes a negative, then regulation can stop that.
So on the part of the customer, what should be the things to look out for? You know, a lot of persons calling for the attention of the customer.
Yes.
You have the traditional bank offering you different products. You also have the telcos who have your data, understand your behavior, and know what particular product to sell to you, which seems to be an advantage for them. So what should be that thing you look out for to say, okay, I'm not doing business with A, I'm doing business with B, and at the end of the day, it's like everybody wins.
Yeah, for the customer, you have to find out what you are comfortable with in the first place. Anytime you do business with a person, there's always a law, a caveat emptor, buyer beware.
Okay.
So it's actually your responsibility to protect yourself in a business environment. So technologies are not things we are used to every day. So at first, those people who are very comfortable with technologies can start it first.
Okay.
They are not outlawing your regular life. So make sure before you enter such systems, before you begin to use transfers for money, make sure you understand the system very well.
Yes.
But if you don't understand the system and then you use it and somebody takes advantage of you in the system, who do you blame?
Okay.
So for the average customer, always have that consciousness. Buyer beware.
Okay.
When you are not sure of what you're doing with a device, do not engage in that transaction.
Okay.
Do not engage, don't be fooled into it, no matter the grammar. Make sure you understand exactly what you are going into.
Okay.
If you are not comfortable with doing online transactions, do offline transactions the way you know how to do it.
Okay.
That is for the customer.
Okay. Now, I asked that because there seem to be just majorly now, four telco having payment service banks in Nigeria. But by the time more come in, you may get confused because different ones with different names will just come your way. Even till now, there are some that do not carry the identity of the parent company that you know.
Yes.
But you just know you're having a banking operation with one bank, but you don't know the service provider or the telco that is behind it. So when more names come in and you're like, oh, I am banking with this one, and then issues begin to come up, it becomes a very difficult thing for consumers or for customers to handle. And you know, when trust is not there, when it has to do with money matter. Okay, let's look at the place of those in the rural areas in all of this.
In all of this, yeah.
Yes.
Part of the arrangements with the central bank is that banks now have a duty to educate the customer.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a duty of care because CBN knows that their services are complex services.
Okay.
So it's part of the code of banking now that it is the duty of the bank to educate its customers about its actions.
Okay.
So if a person has a problem because he was not sufficiently informed about how this process works, we can't shift the liability back to the bank under such clauses.
Okay.
Because in an agreement in a business relation between two people, there's what we call information asymmetry.
Okay.
It is believed that both of them should have the same amount of information for the transaction to be fair and equitable.
Okay.
But when one party has more information than the other party,
Okay.
then there's what we call asymmetry.
Okay.
Therefore, means that one will be
At a disadvantage.
At a disadvantage. So to reduce that information asymmetry, the central bank is saying that all banks must make it a core part of their duties to educate their customers regularly about their evolving technologies and how they are moving from one system to another, so that the customer will be aware, so that when there's a liability, we know exactly who to blame for that.
Yeah, as we wrap up, let's talk about liability.
Yes.
That's one place customers have issues.
Yes.
I put my money in a bank. I put my money in a system. Now, when something goes wrong, the system is telling me they're not liable. So I don't understand this part of liability. Okay, I'll break it down, specifically talking about the banks.
Yes.
You're supposed to provide security for the people's money. Now we understand that people these days, a lot of persons could steal your identity, someone could just have your ATM pin and all of that. But the way some of these institutions come up with, they are not liable for this. Do you think, as a way of protecting the customer, there should be some percentage of liability from the point of the institution that provides the service?
Yes, there should be, and there is, and that's why you always get emails from the banks. Do not disclose your ATM card to anybody.
But sometimes people do not intentionally disclose.
No,
it could be
when there's such a warning and you don't get it, do you blame the bank for that? You provided an email address when you open the bank account. They drop these emails every time. Please, there's a warning. The fraudsters are using this thing now. In fact, they send me files of the new methods that fraudsters are using to defraud people. Do not reveal this. The bank will never call you to ask you for your account number.
Okay.
They always do that. The bank will never call you. The bank will never send you an SMS.
Okay.
The only channel of sending information is through this. So if a bank is doing that to you every time, and then the customer now calls you, see, madam, what's your bank account? You're still listening to the person, then it's your liability. You have been
as a
wronged.
way of catering for every customer, not just for some percentage of the customer, indemnifying online transactions, do you think it should spread across to all account holders so they can indemnify their account, so that gives them some form of security, some form of insurance should anything happen to
Yeah, I think
their
it should spread,
accounts?
yes. There's no reason why it shouldn't spread to all depositors.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that way we'll feel safe. And we can close our eyes and know that our money is safe.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much, Destiny Wu, for coming on the show. Like I said, when Destiny is here, it's always an incisive discussion. So,
thank you for having me.
yes, thank you again for being on the show. Now, let's leave it at the door of the CBN and the commercial banks and also the payment service banks to ensure that, yes, customers can have worthy service. And for you customers, make sure that your eyes are open, you understand the institution, the policies that govern the institution that you choose to deal with as it concerns your money. I'm Blessing Daichi, and that's the show today. Have yourself a great weekend.